Okay, I guess we don't need to announce it that it's being recorded out loud anymore ourselves. So hi everyone, welcome to the June 3rd, 2021 Helm Dev meeting. I'm Scott Rigby, your host for this meeting, and let's go ahead and get started. I don't see any announcements. I see Josh has an agenda item. Is Josh on the call? I don't see Josh on the call yet.
Can you hear me?
Oh, actually, I do. Hey, Josh. There you go.
Hey, I'm going off my phone today, so let me know if there's any issues. Yeah, basically, I don't want to take way too long on this, but I've been preparing a pull request for the contents of HIP number 6. It's in really, really good shape. I'm feeling really good about it. There's a number of kind of things I know will come up as questions in the PR when it's open. So I was hoping if I can get a little bit of feedback on a few things, which I put the bullets in the Google Doc. So basically, HIP 6, was agreed upon several months ago regarding all the OCI changes. And there's just a few things that I think are a little bit up in the air, which I'm like taking liberties on, but I'm wondering if I can get a little feedback prior to opening the PR. So one is the main one is the experimental flag, and also whether the registry client will be an internal or package, as well as removing the Helm chart command. Currently, I have this all just completely done, and I'm wondering, and I'm guessing this is the way we should go, is should we keep things experimental and internal, and then remove them after the new stuff gets in? That's like a question.
So I'll give my take. We probably need to have all the new work land while it's under experimental, and then test it out, and then from there look at having it go GA, because none of us have seen whether if everything's in place yet, right? Because
Sure.
Once it all goes GA, the Go, once it's moved out of internal, the Go API doesn't change until Helm version 4. Right? We can't do a breaking change till Helm version 4. And the CLI commands can't change until Helm version 4 in a breaking way, right? And so we want to make sure that everything's in good shape before we remove that flag. That would be my thing, right? I want to actually see the new style as experimental. And then if we're good with it, and all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, then we remove experimental, which means we can move this stuff out of the internal and into package.
Okay, I pretty much agree and have no problem with that. The one issue is the actual, so the Helm chart commands that are the current way to push and pull from registry. The underlying client is being completely overhauled, and it'd be a lot easier for me to just remove all of that for the new client API. Considering that this is experimental, are we okay to drop that at least?
Yeah, in my view, since it's an experimental flag, whatever makes the most sense in terms of development. Once we go to GA and once we're saying this is now public and those things need to be done, then we would start having to have those conversations about, okay, so we're having, we actually have people who are using this SDK in public, we're supporting this, so we can't make drastic changes. But as part of the experimentation, as part of the experimental flag, that kind of feature does allow for these overhauls to happen, because we do make that guarantee that this is not supported. This is not something that we're going to make backwards compatibility changes for until we mark it as GA. So from my point of view, if it's something that needs to happen in order to help move the experiment forward to that GA standpoint, then yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay. I think unless there's any objections to all that, I think we're on the same page with that.
There's no objection here, Josh. I just wanted to, before you move on from this question, it's I just wanted to note that I realize things have changed in the landscape slightly recently, but I know it wasn't too long ago when Farina and I were discussing on a recent Helm dev meeting about the possibility of moving Helm's OCI integration into a separate package, and I'm not sure that that's the way to go anymore, but I just wanted to at least bring that up in this conversation to see what your thoughts were about that, because the reason for this is twofold. One is, I think our primary user is the client user, but we also have a user, I guess, persona or whatever, or a set of users who use the SDK primarily.
True. Yeah. That's what this internal versus PKG is. Are you talking about a different repo or?
Ultimately, yeah, I think that was part of the conversation. Yeah, was if it was moved, if the experimental functions were left as is, the internal and OCI experimental functions were left as is, but brought in a separate package, it could be versioned on its own cadence. And I just wanted to mention that in this context. And I don't know if that immediately strikes you as something that might be helpful for the development process, or second reason for that is that there's, there are other projects that may want to use, basically it could be a very general purpose library is part of what that's about.
Yeah. So I think I'm a bit against, I'm not against it. I just, there's already a library that is being imported, which is Orus. And in my opinion, that's what that is. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's just too many layers, what you're describing.
Yeah, think about it this way, right? So Helm is just for pushing and pulling and interacting with the OCI registries, is essentially wrapping an outside project called ORAS. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody else wants to do other artifacts, they shouldn't pull in the Helm package. They should pull in ORAS and then target their own stuff. And then if they need to work with Helm stuff, we tend to put all of that in our SDK in the package directory. So that seems like the natural home, unless there's a reason to do something different. Does anybody see a reason?
I just wanted to remind you, Matt, Farina, the conversation was partly about
timing, though.
Yeah, and exposing first primary reason for XDK users was exposing functions, and that was the only reason we were thinking about moving some things out. And one thing we had discussed was moving some general purpose stuff, upstream to Orus. So it sounds like maybe that's just a completely separate conversation that could happen if it was relevant in a post step.
Yeah.
If there were, oh, sorry, go ahead, Farina.
No, go ahead.
I'm saying if there are candidates which are general purpose enough inside of the Helm SDK that would be useful for others, then yeah, let's go and do that. As far as I understand, for the most part, we have most of the code pretty well separated out, because we have the registry internal package, which is really just like the Helm implementation of pulling from registries and understanding versions and all that. So that might not, there's perhaps some things in there that might be valuable to some users, but like without understanding the concrete use cases of why that would be useful to the end user, then we could talk about splitting those out. But yeah, if you had examples of things that are inside of Helm that might be useful outside of the context of Helm, then yeah, we should be considering open sourcing those and making those available to other people, so that they don't have to pull in Helm to pull those libraries and use them in their own packages. But yeah, the Orus project largely is based around that exact same concept and idea, where a lot of the work we were talking about pushing and pulling Helm charts to an OCI registry, that work was mostly split out into the ORIS project to help do the interaction between an OCI registry and arbitrary artifacts. So
Cool, that's great. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that that conversation either got wrapped up or connected. And I think it's pretty much wrapped up. The only other piece of that, Josh, is and I think if I understand correctly, I'm going to read this more closely, but if I understand correctly, part of these functions would then be exposed, meaning they wouldn't be internal functions. There would be, the question is,
yeah, so the PR, so the PR that is coming in would basically be no exposure yet, exposing it from the CLI. And then once we're comfortable with that, moving from the code that's in internal into PKG and removing the flag. And then once that's basically a usable library, maybe then we can have the conversation you're discussing of breaking that into its own repo, its own package. But it's kind of the, I mean, what you're proposing is the same as like taking Helm repo out into its own package.
There is a use case here, right? So people want to interact with Helm and OCI registries right now. Okay. And the question becomes, when will experimental come off? Because if experimental comes off and move into the package directory, it doesn't matter anymore. And right now, the next time we could launch a thing that, this could go out is in 3.7 on September 8th of this year, because that's the next time we do a minor release, right? And so we're talking about right now, we're not going to remove experimental, we're going to bring in the changes. The question that'll immediately follow is, what do we require in order to remove experimental, which then exposes it? And will we be able to meet that requirement for 3.7? Because if not, we're talking a lot longer off, and people are going to want an external library so they can work with OCI registries sooner, right? And so we'll need to have the conversation of not when is the new experience in place, but when do we remove experimental? And I think that's what all of this hinges on, because I'm going to want to do OCI Helm package work before 3.8 comes out. And so the question is, what are going to be the hoops to remove experimental? Do we need it to go out in another minor version and wait for 3.8? Or do we do it is it possible to do it in 3.7? And what would that mean? And I have not thought that through. So if somebody else has an idea, I'd be curious.
Why don't we do this, since I think this stuff, am I still here? Hello? Why don't we do this? Put it up for PR into internal. I would love people's feedback on that code. And then once it's in, we can talk about making another repo under Helm to transfer that into, because I still want like a quality check on it. Like, obviously I can just iterate on it in some repo, but I think we could start by putting it in Helm.
Yeah, and if we want it in another repo, it's going to probably depend on when we take this non-experimental on what people will want. And so that's I don't know if that's a conversation we want to have another day and let people think about. But if it's in good shape, what would then be the requirements to remove experimental? We've never done this before, so this is a new thing for us.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna try to, since we're already halfway through, I'm gonna try to strategically pick some of these. Yeah, the next two, I think I know what people's opinion will be on, hopefully. Oh, so as I was going through this, one of the interesting things is that when the chart is passed off to the registry client, it's in the form of raw bytes. And the reason is because everything to do with OCI is based on the digest of the content. So if I did a Helm package a month ago and I push that thing today, it should be the exact same digest. And so we're loading it in as raw bytes. However, to determine the chart version, the chart name and the chart version from that raw bytes, besides just reading the file name, which is not really a good way to do it. I need to unpack that tarball and load the chart YAML or the chart.metadata. And the only way I can do that right now, it seems, is to create a temp file on disk, write the tarball out to that file, and then load it back in to memory. Is there any way that I can take bytes and get metadata without creating a file?
Yep. There's not a way currently inside of it, but package chart loader does have the functionality to read from that. If you implement I believe it's tar reader, I believe it's the read function. There's a Go interface that you can basically implement inside of there. And I think I've done it before where I needed to do in-memory stream reading of a tar for a chart as well. And I think I might have had a pull request open a long time ago. I can try and find that for you. But if you implement the reader interface, then you can basically allow the chart loader to accept a byte stream, and then it will load the chart for you in memory.
Okay.
And you can pass that as a stream. So it is doable. It's not currently implemented inside of the chart loader library, but it's relatively simple to go and implement that. I think it's just a few lines of code to be able to change to basically accept a byte stream and then pass that over to the functions. Instead of it being passed a file handler or a directory string, you just read straight from the byte stream and then pass that along to load from files or load files. So,
okay, that's what I need. If you, Matt, if you have a moment today to just send me a link to some of these snippets, that'd be really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to skip again the next two and straight to the bottom, and we can revisit if we need to. So one of the interesting things about HIP6 is we are forcing that the base name, by base name I mean the final part of the path on an OCI reference, is equivalent to the chart name. This was because of the way that dependencies work and things like that. And additionally, enforcing that the tag is equivalent to the charts version. That's all working fine. There's a few people who have been complaining about this because they want to be able to push like to latest or to stable or some strange tag or change the base name. So Helm is enforcing this from the CLI standpoint. The way that I'm building the SDK just takes a string reference. So you could give it like the full OCI reference, like registry / namespace / ABCD : latest, and it will push the chart there. And I think that that's kind of a good middle ground in case later we want to allow people to use arbitrary tags or arbitrary base names. Are we okay not enforcing the rules that are in the client in the registry SDK? If I need to clarify, let me know.
I think we've had this conversation before, and I think what we agreed upon was that we should try and implement as close as possible to the chart repository API, and then perhaps go and start looking at arbitrary tags, because it's not an easy task to do, because there are already some design issues that we're running up to where people are saving the chart with one tag, pushing it, and then attempting to pull it. And they're getting some tag resolution issues, or their dependencies are not resolving correctly.
So I don't mean to cut you off. So we're on the same page about that, and I understand the underlying issue. This is about So we have this client based on top of Auras. The parameters are like push chart bytes to reference, and reference is passed straight to Auras, and we're not validating at all. In the pusher and the getter, we're doing the validation that the chart must match. And I'm wondering, is it okay to enforce this from the CLI and not the SDK for now? We're building the reference in other parts of the code base and then passing that on to registry client. But if I'm pulling in registry client myself, who cares where I'm pushing the chart, as long as I'm responsible for downloading it correctly on the other end.
So somebody who's using the SDK may write an application that's pushing stuff into an OCI registry that somebody over on the Helm client somewhere else is going to go pull down.
Right.
Right. And so if they don't do it following those rules, they could push something up in a way that somebody can't pull down. Right.
Okay, how about middle ground?
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Just a real quick point of order. We have a few more agenda items and there are 8 minutes left. Should we give this another couple minutes and then leave 5 minutes for the agenda items? Does that sound fair?
That's fine with me. I'm missing, I can't see the document because my internet's out, so I'm on my phone. But yeah,
it's totally on me too. It was totally on me. I just noticed that, so I want to, or actually I got that pointed out to me. So I want to make sure to give some time, to leave some time.
I want to propose then what if we validate it, but add an option for push and pull to basically not validate, to basically not enforce it, or vice versa.
I think this might need a little bit more of an in-depth thought than we can give this half-hour meeting. So maybe we should just have that conversation in the PR or some other place. Because
right.
I don't know if we'll get to a resolution in the next 2 minutes.
Okay, this was helpful.
Yeah.
I'll open the PR and we can continue the conversation in the open. Okay. All right, thanks, Scott. You can.
Cool. Thank you, Josh. I'm also, by the way, personally excited about that. And I would like to ping you later. There are a couple of people I know that would like to help, by the way. So if that's helpful. The next agenda item is Simon's.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Perfect. Thanks. So David brought this pull request up last time already. And I see Matthew has already commented that is just 2 people needed now to review it. So is there anything else we need to do to, to queue it, to bring it to the attention, or just leave it as is?
So maybe a couple of things here. It might be in general to like garner interest from other people to go and take a review at code. There's always a great idea to go and actually provide a concrete test case that people can go and say, here's actually how to reproduce the issue, and here how this is why it impacts you, who's impacted, and those kind of things. Because then we can get a better gauge on who's impacted, why, and how much of this is a blocker. Because that will definitely help us triage these kind of issues. So if you want to give that kind of feedback inside of that PR to give us a better understanding, what kind of priority we should be providing for this, then let's do that.
Okay.
That being said, the next minor release for Helm is that in August, Farina? Do you remember?
Yeah, I had to go look it up when we planned it. It is in just a sec. The next minor release is in.
I think it's September 8th.
It's September 8th. The next patch release is in July. This is a bug, so it's something that we could possibly target for the patch release. I think this is a bug.
It is a bug. It is a bug. We're just trying to understand the queuing process, right? So do you have the priorities? How you do priorities? So if this is annotating a test case and who gets affected influences that. That's what we need to understand, right? So, okay, I took that note as well. Thank you, Simon, for bringing this up.
Okay, great. If that's all for that, then for the moment, then Paul, you have a question.
Yeah, it should be real quick. Maddie Stratton's running a game show thing on CNCF TV and is looking for CNCF related SIGs and projects to put in a 4-person team to play like a Family Feud style game about Kubernetes. If anyone is interested in being a captain and putting a team together, that would be awesome.
Okay, so we should reach out to you, right, Paul?
You can reach out to me, or there is a form in the thread that you can fill out.
That's awesome. Okay. Thank you. Then Bridget, Artifact Hub question.
I assume other people probably saw these emails too, and it's like, Artifact Hub has gotten chatty this weekend. Is there some kind of action we should take? Should we be making those open issues, or I don't know? What do you think is
What emails and which is it coming into a specific list you're on?
It is just Helm something. Sorry, I didn't put the specifics in, but
Yeah, I'm trying to understand who's getting
it's
emails.
like the
and what's
Helm
going on.
admin list. Like,
yeah.
message approval needed, blah, 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 something went wrong. And
Yeah,
then a bunch
so-
of different like repos that something went wrong with.
Yeah. So what it is there's a issue scanning them. Most of these repos are ones that came over from the Helm hub, and people have not claimed them as their own, and they had some minor issue with them. Part of the reason it's gotten more chatty is by default now, it takes a Helm chart and tries to extract the images in it. Before you had to specify all of them. Now it takes the default configuration, like a Helm template, the default configuration, and figures out as many of the images as it can that way. May not get them all. And it's collecting far more things with security issues. Now, in my laziness, there's a way to opt out of specific repositories for tracking. So every so often I just go through and I clean it up. And I just did that while we were on this call, but that's all it was. It did. And that's why it got more chatty, because
was
it's
just
pointing
wondering
out
if
all
something
kinds of
dramatic
more
happened.
security issues across Helm charts everywhere. And I wish more people would notice them and clean them up.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all.
And by the way, if you list your own charts in the Artifact Hub, you can tell it to notify you when it discovers a security issue. So you can get on getting that cleaned up and keeping your stuff security issue free.
Yes, it would be lovely to, I had led the charge for a while in helping to get people to adopt their repos on Artifact Hub, and haven't for a while. Maybe it's time to get back on that, because there's still probably a few hundred left, right? Okay, well, that was the last agenda item. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time.
Bye.